where to go, how to get here, how much it's going to cost. So how much time have you put into figuring out how to get to heaven when you die? Because that's the appointment that everybody keeps. No one gets out of this world any other way but through death. I want you to end up in heaven. We want you to be made right with God, to be born again, to be clean, to be saved from the punishment you deserve. To understand that, though, you have to understand what God's law is, what His standard is. God has given us a conscience so we know right from wrong. We know it's wrong to steal.
I'm gonna walk down here
it's wrong to lie.
Place. I'm gonna get
it's wrong to murder.
I'm not feeling good, all right? I'll be right back.
So how do we know these things are wrong? We know things are right and wrong because of our conscience. It's not just because society tells us. Because society gets it wrong. See, sometimes society, sometimes our government gets it wrong. That's why we had slavery in this country. Even though the government allowed it, society allowed it, people were enslaved. They were kidnapped and brought to some other country. That's bad. That's evil. That's wrong. It's not going to be wrong if the government says it's okay and if society says it's okay. Well, that's the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany. Society said it was okay for them to kill millions of Jews and other people, but they were wrong. We know these things, but how do we know them? How do we know what's wrong unless there's a standard of right? How do you know a stick is crooked unless you know what a straight stick looks like? See, the standard we have is God, His character. God is truthful. He tells us to be truthful. God is pure. He wants us to be pure in our marriages, in our sex life. God has given us 10 laws, 10 commands for us to follow that are His moral law for us. The 10 commandments are just that. They're not the 10 suggestions. It's not just good advice. You see, if it's just good advice, we no problem with breaking that law. But the 10 commandments are God's moral laws. That means there must be punishment for breaking His laws. And God's standard is really high. It's higher than any one of us. His standard is perfection. None of us can do that, right? So where does that leave you? If you've ever lied or stolen or lusted after someone, which God sees as adultery, or hated someone, which God sees as murder. If you've done any of those things, if you blaspheme God's name using it like a cuss word, if you've done any of those things, you've broken His law. And God is just and holy and righteous. And He has the power and authority to give everyone exactly what they deserve. The good news is He's not going to judge you by someone else. He's not going to punish you for something somebody else did. But He is going to punish you for what you've done. Unless God intervenes somehow. Because God is loving and merciful and kind, but He's also holy and righteous and just. How can God show us His love and compassion without compromising His justice? That's what He did through Jesus Christ. That's why God sent Jesus to this earth. Jesus lived a perfect, sinless life. He always obeyed His Father God. But He also died, being crucified on a Roman cross.
Okay.
He died to take on Himself the punishment for your sin. He died to take the punishment you deserve. Why would He do that? That sounds crazy, doesn't it? It's not just an example of something doing something nice for us. What Jesus did was something no one else could do. He is the perfect Lamb of God, the perfect sacrificial lamb, who didn't have any sins of his own.